Good morning, ladies. So, today I am going to read aloud chapter 3 so that you can hear pronunciation. And as always, any words you don't understand, write them down and look them up afterwards. So, let's continue. Chapter 3, page 43, To the Future. Last Thursday, I told some of you about the time machine and showed you the machine itself, incomplete in the workshop. There you see it now, a little tired after its first journey. One of its ivory bars is cracked. I expected to finish it on Friday, but one of the nickel bars needed repairs. So the thing was ready only today morning. At 10 o'clock today, the first of all time machines began its career, he said. I took the starting lever in one hand and the stopping in the other, pressed the first and almost immediately the second. I felt as if in a nightmare. I turned around to find the laboratory exactly as it had been before. Had anything happened? For a moment, I noticed the clock. It had been 10 just a while ago, but the time was now 3:30. I gritted my teeth and pulled the starting lever and went off with a thud. The laboratory became hazy as I saw Mrs. Watchett walk to the garden door without seeing me. She seemed to shoot across like a rocket. The lever was now set to its extreme position. The laboratory grew fainter and fainter, and the nights seemed to come and go. My ears heard a continuous buzz, and a state of confusion took over my mind. It is rather unpleasant to be time traveling. As my machine picked up speed and my helplessness grew, I saw the sun dart across the sky repeatedly. The laboratory must have been destroyed in the future, for I was now out in the open. I saw the moon pass from phase to phase, but soon I was unable to tell the difference between night and day. The days were changing so quickly now that night and day had merged into a single color of grayness. The landscape was misty and blurred. I was still on the hillside on which this house now stands. The trees grew and changed in instants, spreading and shedding its leaves, turning green in a cycle and then passing away. White snow flashed across the world, replaced by a brief green of spring. I realized my speed was over a year, a minute. The unpleasantness I had felt at the start was less powerful now. The machine was swaying a bit, but my mind was too confused to worry about it, so I flung myself into futurity. At first, all I was aware of were these new sensations, but soon my mind began to fill with certain curiosity mixed with fear. I wondered what strange developments on human civilization might appear before my eyes. There was splendid architecture rising around me, buildings more massive than any in our own time. The hillside remained green throughout the year. There was never any snow. The earth indeed seemed very beautiful, but this is when I began to think about stopping the machine. But to come to a stop, I would have to jam myself into whatever came in my way. This would bring my atoms into such close contact with the obstacle that a chemical reaction would follow, one powerful enough to blow me and my machine out of all possible dimensions into the unknown. I had thought of this possibility while building the machine, but had accepted it as an unavoidable risk. Now that the risk was near, I no longer felt ready. The journey had strange sights, and the swaying of the machine had upset my nerve. I felt that I could never stop, and so I forced myself all the more. As I pulled the lever, the sound of thunder came to my ears. Hail was falling all around me. I seemed to be in a garden surrounded by rhododendron bushes, and the flowers drooping under the weight of the hailstones. What a welcome, I said, for a man who has traveled countless years to be here. I had gotten wet in the meantime. I stood up and looked around me. A massive figure carved out of some white stone was visible through the downpour, and that was all I could see. As the hailstorm started to subside, I saw the figure more clearly. It was very large, standing taller than the birch tree next to it. It had the wings of a sphinx and stood on a pedestal made of bronze, which was covered in moss. The face of the sculpture seemed to be looking at me. You could tell that it had seen through a lot of rough weather, giving it a sort of diseased look. I stood looking at it for a while as it seemed to advance and retreat as the hail, now inconsistent, continued to fall. Soon the sky seemed to brighten up a bit. I finally tore my eyes away. This is when I began to wonder what may have happened to mankind over the years. What would I really find behind the curtain of hail? What if by now men had lost their humanity and cruelty was everywhere? Could mankind have turned inhumane and unsympathetic? It could be that they would find me dreadful and kill me. Fear overcame me, and I tried hard to readjust to the time machine. But immediately the sun shone through the storm and the downpour slowly stopped. Now, under the blue summer sky, I saw clearly the great buildings and felt my aloneness in this strange world. My fear grew to frenzy. I struggled fiercely with the machine, and this time it turned over and struck my chin, throwing me out of it. I still had one hand on the lever, and panting heavily, I tried to climb back on. Once I was back on the machine, my courage returned. Now I looked at the world of the distant future with curiosity and felt little fear. High up on the wall of a nearby house, there was a group of people wearing rich, soft robes. It seemed they had seen me too. I heard voices approaching. Men were running, coming through the bushes. One of them came straight to the lawn where I stood with my machine. He was small, maybe 4 feet high, dressed in a purple tunic, a leather belt around his waist. He wore sandals and his legs were bare to the knees. This is when I noticed how warm the air was. He struck me as being a very beautiful creature, but undescribably frail too. At the sight of him, I suddenly regained confidence. I took my hands from the machine. All right, so ends chapter 3. Now, what I want you to do, I have posted videos on chapters 1 and 2. Today, I will also post a video on chapter 3. So I want you to make sure that you're watching the videos because they sum up the whole chapter as we go. Then the other thing that I want you to do in your notebook, write any scene, chapters 1, 2, or 3. I want you to pick a scene that has happened in the book and it's in third person. I want you to rewrite that scene to first person because as we know, the narrator is the one who is writing the story. It's not the time traveler. So the easiest way would probably pick the time traveler, pick that scene and write it in third person, the ones that the narrator is telling us. So that is your assignment for today, is to pick any scene, chapters 1, 2, or 3, and rewrite it from third person to first person in your notebook, and I will check it once we get back to school. All right, I'll see you tomorrow, ladies.